What's going on, Workforce? Brian here, and welcome to another episode of Community Feedback. If you're new here, Community Feedback is when we take your comments, bring them to the forefront, and discuss them even further. This is going to be kind of an interesting version of Community Feedback. It's actually going to be focused in on a theme of Borderlands 3 versus Destiny 2. A couple weeks ago, made a video talking about why I canceled my pre-order for Borderlands 3. Very excited to play the game here eventually, maybe November, December, sometime later this year, but essentially it just got to be too much, especially for September, and that video just went nuts. Tons of dislikes, which I think ended up driving the views even further beyond the community. I could be completely wrong here, but the stats on it are pretty basic. We've got 37,000 views, we've got over 1,200 comments, and obviously 416 likes, representing 17% of a ratio there. So that's really quite fascinating stats. Obviously a huge part of the Borderlands 3 community came in, and when we look at the average watch time, didn't actually watch the video and just hated on it because they thought I was hating on Borderlands 3. And to be clear, don't hate the game. Hopefully it continues to improve. Obviously the launch and the reviews are out and the game is selling real well. Couldn't be more thrilled. Very excited to jump in later this year. Anyhow, like I said, this is because you guys asked, and we're going to handle this community feedback a little differently. Usually we like to take several comments, kind of bring them up, talk about them, and then kind of move on to the next. However, there's plenty of people who think I'm an idiot on the internet, and I fully respect them. They have that ability to do so. And so I'm going to cycle a lot of their comments on the screen while we go and basically talk about Borderlands 3 and Destiny 2, because immediately that's kind of the theme that was brought up. But I do want to highlight a couple of comments first, because they're going to set the stage for the overall discussion piece of this video. And I'd love always to know your thoughts, obviously in the comments below, or you can hit us up on Discord, DM me, things like that. If you don't necessarily want to have a public conversation about it, those options are always available. But I want to focus first in on a couple of comments, one from Jay, Tim, RazorX, and Verpunk, who really set the stage here that I think it's going to be hopefully a really good discussion video. So Jay says, I gave up on Destiny a while ago. It just feels like a money grab at this point. The content only lasts a week, even if that, and the end game is always stale. And Destiny just doesn't feel like it used to. I'm not sure why, but I'm super stoked about Borderlands 3. Even if people don't like it, I get the feeling that I'm really going to enjoy it for some reason. And then Tim says, the real tragedy here is that you still play Destiny. All of those other games, Final Fantasy and WoW, take up a lot of time to play. Gears, in my opinion, hasn't been good for a while because it's super linear. Saying that Borderlands is 2, however, you have the loot system. The video may be old by now, but I think that you need to wrap your head around what's important for you as a consumer and what's worth your time. Money. Is the experience of playing a remaster worth it when you know that it's going to happen? It's a money grab. But after that, Destiny, Bungie did to the players is horrific, and no one should ever play that game. RazorX says, Borderlands 3 not being a live service is a game that's more freeing for me. I much prefer it that way. This just means that I'm not worried in a way of being behind others or needing to keep up. It's a game that doesn't push me to constantly play and to worry about things like dailies. And then finally, Verpunk says, LOL, I would rather play Borderlands 2 for the 100th playthrough than play some expansion from Destiny. And with these comments, this is, I feel, where I ultimately actually went wrong, especially in the video, because there are tons of people who really checked out or really felt like I was saying that Destiny was better than Borderlands, etc. And honestly, not at all. I recently only returned to Destiny, and if you've been part of the workforce following the channel, you've probably seen that journey, but not everybody's going to see every video, not everybody's going to know the full context of it, and so I obviously did not do a good job explaining kind of my thoughts and process here. I think everybody who is, especially like concerned, frustrated Destiny, that's well earned. Bungie and Activision in and of itself have done a great job at really upsetting a lot of players and doing things that obviously don't work for a great majority of players out there. That being said, that separation that has occurred with Bungie and with Activision, with the different moves that Bungie is making, with bringing in cross-save, and hopefully one day really true crossplay, but well, that's a different debate for another day. Those are moves that I think are very consumer focused. That's why I felt like they deserve another chance. So I'm not actually saying that Destiny is better than Borderlands by any stretch of the imagination. The real key here is they're actually two different and complete games. The thing I see is a lot of people think Destiny is a looter shooter, and it's not. It really has never been. It got kind of labeled that, and there's a mindset that people have for that because Borderlands, you know, as a series really is kind of the godfather of it all. And that's where I think there's some interesting kind of overlap, as well as some natural frustrations when it comes to Borderlands and with Destiny. And I want to dive into that here in a little bit. But as far as it goes, like, I think that everybody, like, some of the comments that you're seeing below, people have spent like over $200 something. Like, Destiny's model and business model and monetization systems have been both subpar, have been greedy, have been like just very business focused and not player focused. So I don't fault anybody for that. In fact, it is kind of an affront. I can understand how a Borderlands fan can be affronted by that fact. It's like when you get Borderlands, like, you know what you're getting. You're not getting all these additional requests for additional money beyond the DLC. And if you end up getting like a Game of the Year edition, or you buy the whole package, I think a study actually was just coming out that games really should be $120 today. But what we've been doing is we've just been selling starter editions to games for $60, and then they sell the rest of the game to you in the form of DLC. And that's also caused a lot of frustration in players. And that's just the mindset that I have when it comes to DLC. We got a video going up later this week. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure it's going to piss a lot of people off who disagree with me, but that's fine. Anyway, so the Borderlands versus Destiny. I think Borderlands obviously set the stage. It is the godfather when it comes to these kind of games, and it did it so well, and it has such love. And one of the things we actually was kind of enlightening was when we had Skill up on the podcast. He was telling us, like, yeah, there are people who have played Borderlands 2 every day for the last 7 years. And for me, I found that shocking, but we have people in the comments saying that. They're like, yeah, I still play Borderlands 2, etc., etc. And Borderlands 2 is always this great game that, like, we played a lot of. And then eventually it just became a party game. And I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean that when friends would come over, we'd bust out some beers. We'd all boot up Borderlands 2 and play kind of four-player split screen, especially on the new generation consoles. That was always something that was really enjoyable to do because it didn't require a lot of investment. I think also one of the things I do want to be clear on, that if it wasn't clear in other videos, is that while the fact that Borderlands not being a live service game actually works for me, nobody could ever, outside of one comment, explain to me why then I should jump in on day one. And the only person who could explain it is that we're never guaranteed tomorrow. And that's absolutely true. Like, we have no guarantee for tomorrow. So, like, yeah, you should jump in today because you could play, you could be enjoying it because, again, you know, you don't have a guarantee. And I thought that was actually probably the closest thing to it. And that's where the frustration comes in, is that you have this sense that a lot of people subscribe negativity to our live service game. My experience with live service games have usually been positive because I tend to avoid the bad ones. Destiny 2 is what actually caught me off guard. Destiny 2 really kind of bit hard, and that's why it's still one of our biggest videos to date on the channel. That's why I totally understand where people were coming from. Where I feel that I obviously went wrong in that, when I said that wasn't as clear as possible, is that with what Activision and what Bungie did, Borderlands 2, there is this, like, there was this both a good cherished memory, and there's also the fact that you know what you're getting. Like I said earlier, with a live service game, things can change, and that could be both positive and negative. And being that these are two varying different games, but also, again, have that overlap. When you look at some of the top streamers, when you look at some of the top content creators, there are people who cover both games. But then the community itself played both games and obviously had a better experience, and I think rightfully so, with Borderlands 2. We were kind of sold that Destiny was kind of like an online Borderlands, and then it's only just recently that Luke and the team over there have redefined Destiny as a MMO, an action MMO, an MMORPG, so to speak. And that's kind of where there are key differences in these games. And that's kind of where, when I looked at it, when I really thought about like why people were so frustrated, is that especially when bringing up Destiny 2, is that Destiny 2 hasn't done itself any favors. Destiny as a franchise hasn't done itself any favors, and gamers have put that trust in them and have had that betrayed. Where on Borderlands, the games have delivered, with the outside exception that beyond the game, in the real world with publishers and things like that, that's where we've seen some of the drama like unfold. And especially with the Borderlands 3 review thing, a lot of people were frustrated by it. And ultimately, we've always said that if it's a great game, it's not going to matter. People who said they were going to boycott Borderlands 3 because of the Epic Store, and they'll just pick it up on Steam. Great, that's not going to matter, because it is such a good game, and people are responding to it in such a positive way that it's really exciting for me to see that. And that's why I'm looking forward to playing it when I have time. And that's the whole point of those videos, is essentially to update you guys on what we're playing. Gears 5, like as this minor update, has really captivated me. I'm having a hard time pulling myself away. I don't know why I'm a huge fan. I've been working on a script talking about, I wish I wasn't a fan of Xbox because I love JRPGs, but there are just some franchises that just, like, for whatever reason, have their hooks in me. I guess there's just things about some of those games that are just so much fun to enjoy. So I'm looking forward to finishing up my games for September, and then hopefully after 5.1 with Final Fantasy to be able to jump into Borderlands on November, December, or if for some reason there's just too much to do, we've got a baby on the way, and maybe we'll have to wait till next summer. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully that answers the question. This is obviously community feedback. It's not scripted. And so there's just a lot of thoughts bouncing through my head. So I do want to apologize to anybody who was like really frustrated or upset, especially when bringing up Destiny and Borderlands. Like, these are two separate games with some common threads. And honestly, I'm very happy with what Borderlands has done. The thing that does concern me is that we are already seeing huge, massive drop off in numbers regarding kind of the content and the streams. And that's ultimately what I was referring to. That's ultimately where a lot of these content creators who were talking about jumping in and playing it, do that and then they move on. Now, dedicated content creators for the community, I'm thrilled that you've got so much content to play and to enjoy. I just didn't feel like it was like the right touch to go in and just kind of like tease Borderlands 3 just for like people accuse me of view sniping or view hunting, and it's like, no, not really. Actually, still completely blown away that video went so far beyond our community, namely because recently our videos have just really stayed in locally with the people who are subscribed here, and so it was just really kind of like, oh well, that went beyond. That was not what I was expecting. I was just kind of sharing kind of that update with everybody here on the channel. So hopefully, like I said, I answered kind of the real, what I see as the real core here is that Destiny is offensive, and it has hurt people, and it has cost people a lot of money, and those people are right to not want to be interested in it. For me, having left it, it was very difficult, and for me to come back only when they've kind of started checking off that list of like, all right, if you want me back to be able to play your game, here's what you have to do, and them doing that, and hopefully that's going to continue, but it's still a risk. Like any live service game, any game that receives updates, it's still a risk because they could change the thing that you love about it for negative, for the worst, and so we'll have to wait and see. Now, hopefully you guys are continuing to enjoy Borderlands. I've been enjoying watching streams because while I work, getting things done, it's been nice to be able to kick back and get some of that humor, get some of that gameplay. And it's going to be something we're going to keep watching because, again, there is the context, there is the story. It doesn't, it's beyond my interest, and it's beyond like any one gamer's interest. But overall, there is a kind of a creator market. There is this creator economy. There is this streaming economy. And it's going to be neat to see where Borderlands ultimately lands in kind of in that life cycle. It doesn't have to obviously be the #1 streamed game in the world. Like that's like today is League of Legends, and that's going to kind of rotate. But is there going to be that drive, that interest? And that's essentially the question that I'm asking, and that can only be answered with time. Like I said in the video, I hope I'm wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll have some more Destiny stuff coming out this week, because as we get geared up for Shadowkeep, it's going to be interesting and exciting to see. Hopefully you guys are enjoying whatever games you're playing. These videos aren't meant to tell you what you should play, what you should enjoy, but hopefully invoke a conversation and a discussion around it. I do appreciate all the comments, positive, negative. I really appreciate everybody coming and checking out that video. Hopefully, hopefully you're having a great time with the games that you love, and hopefully that Borderlands 3, for those especially who played Borderlands 2 for 7+ years, it's going to captivate you guys. Hopefully you won't have to wait 7 years into the next Borderlands. That's the hope, and we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But thanks so much for hanging out with me in this video. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.